Have you ever heard it said that God always answers prayer? Sometimes it's yes, sometimes it's no, sometimes it's wait. I don't like the no's. Do you? I want to talk to you in this video about a prayer that always gets a no answer. In fact, did you know that Jesus prayed and God told him no? We're going to talk about it in this video. If that sounds interesting to you, let's check it out. Hi, my name's Scott Lehr. I've been a Christian for over 20 years. God radically transformed my life, and I'm on a pursuit of truth and transformation. I don't think we should just have information. I think we should have transformation. I believe that the transformation we experience in our lives, the spiritual transformation, it overflows into a good news saturation of the world. I don't think we're supposed to go out on a mid-level marketing scheme and convince people to be Christians, but I do think that our lives should overflow with the transformation that God does in us. And so I've got this channel, I've created this channel for people who want to experience that spiritual transformation. And if that's you, subscribe, hit the like button, become part of this community. The bell notification will let you know every time we release a video. But in this video, I want to talk to you about a prayer that God says no to. Did you know that God repeatedly gets petitioned by his people, by saints? Sometimes saints, sometimes they get a guy like Jonah. He's not really a saint, but he is a prophet. And what ends up happening is that God tells them no. Sometimes it's a delay, Elijah, but oftentimes it's a no, whether it's a Job or it's Moses or one of these guys in the Bible. And the prayer is, I want to be out. I want to be done with this life and all the things that it entails and all that's happened here. It's too much. I can't handle it anymore. And so will you stop it? And so you look at Elijah. Does he ask God to take him? Yep, but it's a delay. And then what does God do? He feeds him and reassures him. Remember after that prophets in Baal, and he's like, should be on this spiritual high point, but instead he's down. He wants to be dead. He wants to be gone. What about Moses? Moses? No, he delays, strengthens him. What about Job? Job, he reveals himself to Job, restores Job, blesses him more than he had before. Job I'd be done. This is terrible. I hate this life. Understandable. Jonah is corrected and confronted. God does different things for each person, but he says no repeatedly to this prayer. And Jesus prays it in one of the darkest moments in all of the Bible. What's the darkest place you've ever been? I remember caving one time when I was a youth pastor. I was with a group of teenagers, and the guide took us. We were in West Virginia. They say the darkest caves in the world are the Mammoth Caves. You can look those up. They're still finding them and discovering them. And the guides will oftentimes take people to a spot because it's utter darkness. And they'll turn off all the lamps on their helmets. And that you can feel the darkness. And it's disorienting. Your eyes don't adjust. And I remember when I was in a cave, not those caves, but in a cave in West Virginia. And we were crawling on our bellies through spots that were small and going through mud and all that stuff. And we got to a spot where the guide told us to turn our lights off, and you couldn't see your hand in front of your face, and your eyes didn't adjust. You couldn't all of a sudden see the people around you once your eyes adjusted. They didn't. He started talking about the darkness of hell, the isolation. And I'll never forget that moment because I felt darkness. Jesus, when he's in the Garden of Gethsemane, is in a dark moment. His divinity and his humanity are in conflict with one another. Fully God, fully man. We don't like to talk about his fully humanness often, though. We know that he learned through suffering, Hebrews tells us. We know that he resisted sin to the point of shedding blood, and in the Garden of Gethsemane, he sweat drops of blood. But you know that if there's any other way, God said no. But he said no to Jesus to say yes to you. And Jesus left the garden even more committed to going to the cross. And something happened where while he was alone in the garden, his buddies are falling asleep. He didn't even ask them to pray. He just asked them to sit there. And they couldn't do it. He said, just sit here and watch. They couldn't do it. And an angel visits him. And we know that sorrow, he said, I'm overwhelmed with sorrow, Matthew chapter 26. God turned it to joy. He was alone but not abandoned. And his sorrow was turned to joy, like a woman who gives birth to a child. Oh, it's painful, it's difficult, but the joy that comes after. Hebrews tells us that he endured the cross, the suffering of the cross, for the joy set before him, which was you and me, our reconciliation, our redemption. And so God gave him a no to ask you in an invitation to him to say yes. The no to Jesus was a yes to you so that you could be invited through Jesus to the Father. Will you say yes? See, even when God says no in prayer, he actually does have a greater plan. He did for Elijah, he did for Job, he does for you, he did with Jesus for you. And so the question is, will you say yes to Jesus? Why does God say no? Well, sometimes we can see it would be so good. Why wouldn't you heal this child of cancer? Why don't you feed these people in Africa? Why don't you do these things I'm asking you, God? Sometimes he's saying, I've given you the resources. Sometimes it's, I already have said yes, but you're not seeing it. But sometimes he does say no. Sometimes he delays and there's always a better plan. Will you trust him even when you don't understand? See, when we're in doubt in these moments in our own circumstances, things seem very dark. But when we come to somebody else's story, it's easy, whether it's Jesus or Job or Moses, to zoom out. When in doubt, we should zoom out. It's what Jesus does with his disciples when they're frustrated and confused in the upper room discourse, and Jesus tells them somebody's going to betray him. And he says, Peter, his best friend's going to deny him, and they're confused. And then he says, in this world, you're going to have trouble. I've overcome this world. But we're troubled. Okay, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to prepare a place for you, and I'm going to come back for you. Can we go with you? Where I'm going, you can't come. I'm coming back for you. But what Jesus has done is they're focused on these circumstances right here. He zooms out. When in doubt, zoom out. See the bigger story. And in the bigger story, God's no is a blessing. Can you testify to a time when God said no to a prayer that you had and it was a blessing? Maybe you're frustrated with him. I'd love to hear about that too. If you feel transparent, welcome, courageous enough to put that in the comments, I'd love to hear it. We could have a conversation here. I think we're better when we have conversations, even when we disagree. Maybe you disagree that God's no's are good. But it's clear that God said no to Jesus, and Jesus was praying. And that no was so that you could say yes. Have you said yes to Jesus? And if you have, maybe some of the no's you've gotten in prayer are for good and you haven't realized it. I'd love to hear about it. Put it in the comments. If you like this video, hit like, hit subscribe, share it with somebody you think it might challenge or be encouraged by, or if somebody that you think could tell me how I'm wrong. I'd love to have a conversation with them, because if I'm wrong, I don't want to be wrong. I want the truth. Thank you. We'll see you next time.